The following is a conversation with the Rumors of Instinct podcast, and I just want to say that I had planned to put this out on Friday, this coming Friday, but after doing this interview, or rather, I would say having a conversation with this gentleman, I felt that honestly, I just felt the need to put it out tonight. So I just want to say that tonight's or this week's Kraken conversation will be coming out tonight, and there will be a regular public episode on Friday instead, just so we can make up for the missed public episode today. But I encourage all of you to please watch, listen, however you get these podcasts and episodes. It is absolutely a very significant conversation, mainly because a lot of things that he's been saying to me for months, because we've known each other for a while, has been coming to light in a lot of my research, I do have to say. So again, I have to call it like it is, and so far he's been absolutely correct. So with that being said, thank you so much and enjoy. All right, so let me just say, so we started recording. Let me just say to everyone that's going to be listening or watching this when it comes out this coming Friday, that this gentleman that I have with me right here on the show today, guys, has literally said every single thing that has come true and has been, at least to me, proven by my research and the evidence from my research. I was very honored to be on his show 2 to 3 months ago, and I do have to say there were a lot of things he said there that I did in fact believe. However, it's just that my evidence and research has been coming full circle with everything he said more and more, literally week by week. So without further ado, this is the Rumors of Instinct podcast with Generation Z, and let's jump right into it. So, sir, first off, I just want to thank you for your service, and you claim to be part of, and I know for a fact you were part of the secret space program. Is there anything you want to just jump into right off the bat in terms of what you went through, what you've seen, and maybe some of the biggest misconceptions too that people have?
Well, the biggest misconception is that it's a rare phenomena. It's
Mm,
actually a super common phenomena. And in the literature, it's been established since the late 80s and 90s. People think it's a new thing. People think because it's always you gotta think of it, we live in like the eternal now, the moment. And so
right.
people in 2021 think this is like a relatively new phenomenon that must have emerged through the internet and through the ideas of like the post video game, post digital community. This has been established since the earliest days of the UFO and cosmic awareness, cosmic truth phenomenon. And as far back as the early 1900s that we can record the concept of breakaway civilization. That's Jules Verne era intellectual, independent thinking type discourse and conversation. That's Nikola Tesla era tech ideas. These are, since the 1870s, 1880s, they started seeing airships. They started seeing USOs, mysterious submarines, and exactly like the idea of the secret breakaway civilization, which the umbrella term is the secret space program.
Right.
But they do much more than space. They do all exploration, all true cosmic relationships with the extraterrestrials, ultra-terrestrials in this and all dimensions. They are the Star Trek's Federation. They are that kind of level of advanced society. And we are a kind of protected game reserve, if you were, or a society, because a lot of it comes into the idea of of history and truth and real like place and sense of time. But this is a conversation that I want to get across is not uh, rare. It may be obscure,
Right.
but it's not uncommon. This is Shangri-La, Xanadu, uh, the ideas of Atlantis. This has been in the discourse of conversation forever, basically. That there are secret societies that exist just outside of our knowledge that have advanced technology that control our domain of everything, control our reality, and we may observe them, but and now the conversation is getting more evolved that we are actually serving them more directly because they can control things like our memories. They can control things like our, uh, you know, everything hypnotic, like MK Ultra level, mind control. They can control our everything from our beliefs to you know uh, our lifespans.
Got
And that's actually a direct kind of causation into the whole idea of the breakaway civilization is how much control does this civilization have on our civilization, and if so, what is the bigger picture here? What is the actual truth here?
Right. So how many people would you say, if you had to throw out a rough number, have been recruited into the secret space program generally? I know that technically speaking, there is the Solar Warden fleet, there's the Aurora fleet and all that, and there's the I believe it was the Dark Fleet, if I'm not mistaken, as well too. But how many would you say on average, on, I don't know, every 5 to 10 years, let's say, how many human beings, regardless of which country, would you say are put into the program, and then they're age regressed after they've done their time and what have you?
It's hard to put a number on it, but I'd say in total, it has to be close to 100 million people in the
Wow.
Western world, and in total in the globe, close to a billion.
Wow. And so their memories are wiped when they return?
It depends on the actual country doing the indoctrination process and how they treat these people. The Chinese, for example, just liquidate them, and so they're actually the bigger contributor. Them and India and Brazil are the largest contributors of personnel. Now, that was the answer to the question: how many human beings have been indoctrinated to the secret space program total? Americans,
Mm.
it's close to 100 million over the last century and a half, or last century and 30 years. Well, about a half. I would say 150 years, because it started in the 1870s and 2020, so about 150 years.
Is there any way you could walk us through a bit of the indoctrination process? I mean, even if you'd be willing to share your own experience.
Not a voluntary process. People need to get that out of their heads, even though it may appear to many people to be a question.
Right.
It's always kind of like they have the upper hand. And even though they may ask you to sign the contract, you're dealing with a system, a regime that's already meant and calculated to get you to volunteer your actual soul, to put it very bluntly. And I know a lot of people listening may be too scientific, or, whatever, your chi, your life force,
Right.
your existence on this earth on a multi-dimensional level, on a true to immortal level, to serving in this program.
Right.
Very much like how in Scientology they have Sea Org,
Right.
and
Right.
L. Ron Hubbard makes you sign a billion-year contract so that when you die, you'll come back reincarnated and continue to serve Sea Org. That's a literal thing that these wizards or whatever, these magicians, these occultists that run the secret space program, and they actually do siphon through this idea of advanced, like things like meditation, astral projection, chakra aura type level of spirituality, where they're judging people based on the colors of their auras, by their blockage of their chakras, by their chi energy, and so
And
they're recruiting based on that. That's the thing. It's Rh negative bloods, but also it's because of the chi and because of telekinetic and telepathic sensitivities, X-Men level type shit.
do
They
they
want
sorry, do they evaluate each individual person and see based on their genetics where best they would be applied to?
for the myth of free-born human beings, Aboriginal human beings, has not really existed in America since the eugenics program occurred in the 1930s, which placed great emphasis on putting hospitals and having prenatal centers deliver all infants. So by the 1930s, they had already genetically performed a census on America.
Mm.
And remember, the Nazis learned eugenics from Americans.
Right. And would you
We
dare
did
to say,
all the genetic science. all the genetic science, all that legwork, we did it. We went to every mountain, every valley, every state, every acre of land, and just counted people. And the doctors did that for the United States government because, in fact, most of the immigrants, when they came through Ellis Island and were processed, had already had that same DNA work done to them. And they were just capturing what the quote unquote aboriginals, the freeborn of the states that had arisen after the first and second wave immigrations. Nobody came, remember, they all came from England. No one came to America without paperwork and without a DNA test, without some kind of ID, without being, even the slaves. Everyone was genetically processed. And this is not a myth. This is business as usual. And the idea that people came to America without any paperwork is what really pisses people off. Remember, they're called illegal aliens. It's the idea that you need to be on a census and registered into the system.
Right.
And that's why there's all those processing centers down there. It's because they're doing that to those people. You can't, this is a game reserve. There's no freeborn animal in the game reserve. It's all, someone's going to come by and dart you and then puts you in the system. And much in the same way as how they recruit you. They've had these technologies since the 1800s, and back then it was much easier to abduct people, and it was much actually harder for them to make people forget. But those fantastic and elaborate stories formed the backbone of all those amazing stories, science fiction magazines, and like H.P. Lovecraft, all those science fiction novels in the golden age of science fiction. Jules Verne was an insider. He was one of the first people in the secret space program. He knew that they were going into the hollow earth. He knew that they were flying balloons around the world at a rate of 80 days per, orbit for circulation. He knew that they were able to take the jet stream. He knew that there was time travel. He knew that there were Martians and that we had already fought them in early encounters and things using biological warfare. And that was the secret weapon, was poison gas and nerve gas and shit. And see, they couldn't forget. They just let him write. Like they just let him talk, and they just called it science fiction. And of course, there were things like the Fabian Society, Freemasons, controlling the literature, controlling the society, and basically people then though were very powerless. Even if you were woke, you were just there were people back in the 1930s that believed that aliens existed, that men lived on the moon, and it was on Popular Mechanics magazine and stuff, like Roswell when it crashed and things. It was a subject that people talked about, and it's just been over the last 40 to 50 years more highly scrutinized than ever before, and thus given more of like a taboo status. But really, it's like they've never really kept it a secret. They have never really kept it a secret. The only thing is that they've kept it ridiculed.
Right.
They've kept it kind of obscure and ridiculed.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, it's far too, I guess we could say there are too many involved, even at a secretive level, to constantly plug leaks, so to speak. Is that why it's been ridiculed?
Yes. Well, I mean, the idea of it being ridiculed is how they control the spin. It's how they control the attitude. But the information's there. The information has always been there. And insiders have always been out there. Whistleblowers have always been there. In the 1970s, they made a documentary in the BBC that actually aired on, I think it was Channel 2 of the BBC, about how the Russians and the Americans were working together during the Apollo moon landings to secretly go to Mars together. And it was $1 billion conspiracy. And they had insiders talking about the information and then given acid, and they had mental breakdowns, and they were put in mental asylums and things. Like that. This was filmed in the 70s. Right. And yes, it was quote unquote science fiction, but this was a topic of discussion. Capricorn 1 is a film that was released in theaters with O.J. Simpson, in which they fake the moon landing, or they fake the Mars landing. After NASA tells everyone they're going to go to Mars, and they put everyone in the soundstage. And then the astronauts try to tell the world, and they're killed by the government.
Right. Now,
this was a major motion picture.
Right. And now, how did the film, I believe it was Close Encounters, but at the very end, one of the final scenes where the aliens are doing a human-alien exchange program with
exactly.
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg was supposed to receive real 8mm Air Force recovered documentary footage of the transaction between extraterrestrials, specifically the Greys, and the United States Air Force in a base in Germany.
What ended up happening with that? Do you know?
Oh, they just eventually, the government got cold feet.
Mm,
The efforts of disclosure have been like, very, they've been wanting to tell people for a long time, but they continually get the no-go. They continually get the red light from higher powers. So when, for example, when that film Close Encounters was made, it was the Reagan administration, and the Reagan administration really wanted to tell people what was going on.
right.
He even let it slip. He even let the secret space program slip a couple of times, saying that we once had 300 astronauts in orbit in space right now at the time he was speaking, which is
Yes, I heard
impossible
it. Sorry,
because we only had
it was in
8.
a transcript, right?
Yeah, it was in a transcript. Exactly. He was constantly trying to come up with ways of disclosing this information. And one of their ways was he was going, remember, he loved movies. He was
Right.
going to give a real, like, 15 seconds of UFO footage to Steven Spielberg. And Steven Spielberg, when he was going to pick up the information, was actually apparently met by people and told just to kind of forget. He said, he wasn't going to, but then they were like, we'll kind of make you an offer you can't refuse situation. And that's kind of why he is still so powerful in the whole Hollywood world, is because he really did have these like government connections at one point.
Now, would you say these higher ups, so to speak,
Oh,
would you classify them as the Galactic Federation, a combination of humans and extraterrestrials, or like, do you have any rough idea on who these higher ups are and what species, race, or what the objective is specifically? Because it seems like human civilizations have been reset over long periods of time, and overall, aliens have made themselves known depending on if that civilization was ready or not. So, if I may ask, who are these higher ups giving the orders to people, like within the CIA or within the rogue shadow government?
the solar war, or those people may be controlled by secret societies, but the secret societies are the gatekeepers to Solar Warden. And Solar Warden is really the boss, basically. You can say, to kind of define it, and the way I've seen it and the way I experienced it was Solar Warden was the United States Navy. The government was a group called Atlantis Rising. They were a international group of diplomats, and their main Earth base is in Astana, Kazakhstan. And they are a group of diplomats from around the world. Les Sans Frontier. They even speak French and Esperanto. Their main language is Esperanto.
Wow.
Right? Exactly. This is a real cosmopolitan group of cats. And, I'm talking like they know 10 languages each. Since they've been the age of 14, they've been internationally indoctrinated to ideas of diplomacy, peace, international politics, everything like that. Like, these people are speaking on levels that ever wonder how you get a job at the UN?
I've never wondered, but I've heard it's very irky and interesting.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, these are the people that they're drawing from the youth camps who are in the youth UNs, who are going and meeting with diplomats who are the sons and daughters of politicians. And this is like they're real. That's the political side of it. But it's not one nation. It's more because they don't operate with any authority from Earth. They are the authority of Earth.
God.
Exactly. And so they're kind of like made not to, their culture is basically made not to represent themselves as serving any nation or tongue, which they call the lingua franca, which is your mother tongue, your father tongue. And so they speak in Esperanto, which is intentionally designed as a language to produce world peace.
Now, these are humans that have been indoctrinated when they were
Yeah,
young.
these are human. Because remember, like I said, the rule is a species, when it reaches a certain level, has to govern itself when it serves in a higher galactic federation. It can't be a slave species, and it can't be a host species for a parasite, right? And yes, mankind has already reached its enlightenment. We, I guess so. And then, but I was going to say at this point, so we have the Solar Warden as basically the Navy.
Right.
and the Coast Guard. And so you have, but it's like, imagine it like a beach or an island, and it's surrounded by an ocean. Now we're at the level where we can start sailing away from the island, and we've already had contact by foreigners, but it's like, you know, we are already a part of a much larger system, and we have to do more homework and education as a species on many different levels, including our spirituality and it basically just our perspective and our way of addressing uh, things. Because it, for a large part, we have to kind of ascend and prove that we're worthy and be able to, in much the same way that an Aboriginal tribe, like say a tribe in the Amazon, is contacted by modern man.
Right.
Now, the traffic may be going one way, which is them visiting us.
Right.
But until we can actually participate in their society, no matter how foreign and alien it is to us,
Right.
until we can be like, hey, I'm at a restaurant and I'm wearing, you know, closed-toed shoes and blue jeans, and I'm having a conversation on your TV network news, and I understand it, then
Right.
it's just in our best interest to be kept in our natural state of being.
Right.
And they treat us the same way as we treat those uncontacted tribes. And their criminals want to hurt us and take our resources. But now we're at the level where we could have our own police force. We could have our own basic militia and military, and even have some technology, which we have not only recovered, but have been given by these, you know, cosmic anthropologists, these cosmic philanthropists, basically, and then the Galactic Federation, and specifically in the Ashtar High Command, and specifically because the Venusians and our alliance with the Greys. Now, the caveat, of course, behind that is the deal, because people can make deals.
Right.
And people have allegiances, and not all humans work together. And so
Okay.
there are actual splinter groups of humans, and that there are groups of humans that have allied with enemies of other aliens and gotten themselves very deep into intercosmic politics. You know, and it's, imagine if, say, this Amazonian tribe started, you know, picking sides in the Cold War,
Right.
and that could complicate things extremely difficultly. And that's exactly what's going on now. Is that we have like the cosmic Soviet Union wanting to put nuclear missiles in our backyard, and that's drawing down the heat from the. And we were just like at some point just getting cans of fruit and vegetables from these people, and like, you know, we were still. That's what I'm saying. Like, we're at some point we have a lot of catching up to do. And even though we are at a point where we're extremely smart and capable, we are still like the Ewoks in Star Wars.
Right.
You know, like we are in the middle of some shit.
So now I just want to say that what you were heading on to, man, like what you were leading into is really excited me, because it basically, it has to do with all the questions that I really want to ask. So first off, which countries would you say are, maybe countries is overgeneralizing it, but which, I guess I'm going to say countries because I have no other way of perceiving it, but which countries would you say are aligned with, I guess we could say, you know, non-compliant ETs, or, you know, not friendly ones, or self-serving one? Like, is there a conflict between Russia and the US, or, you know, Israel and China, something like this? Or
there is no real conflict between Earth nations. That's a myth.
okay.
That's entirely just to keep people in the mindset of this Earth being the only Earth, right? That's like inter-island conflict. But there's not. We all work together on this Earth. And we have a true League of Nations, and you can see us actually working together when you look at war games, and the fact that we haven't really gone to World War III.
Right.
If World War III was a reality, if we really were in competition, World War III would have been imminent.
Right.
As it was. And then we're kind of stuck in this permanent game of Cold War, which means stalemate, which means it's this non-existent tension to keep the people looking, you know, day to day, living day to day.
Right.
Now, the truth of the Earth conflict is that these humans have already formed a breakaway civilization. These humans have, in the Dark Fleet, for example, the Notwaffen, they acquired technology during a very strange time. Now, the world history as we know it omits a point of great reset, of cyclical apocalypse.
Right.
Now, like you said, every society seems to be kept in check, right?
Mhm.
Now, if you want to look at the reasons why this occurred, it's a kind of a deep history thing. And we have like different cycles, different epochs of existence, at different natural turns of seasons and disasters. And that's like one of those things where it's like deep, like, 30,000, 300,000 level, like, view down.
Right.
And the kind of what, long story short, one of these cyclical apocalypses occurred. The world was kind of reset, and that was when the 1870 Great Reset mud flood kind of happened. The
Okay.
strange thing with that is, while we were rediscovering the technology, and this is totally allowed, by the way, by they were our old masters, which were the reptilians. The
Uh,
reptilians used to have stronghold and dominion over the world for 4 cycles,
if I could
four
ask very,
apocalypses.
very, very quickly, if I may ask, do they look like us, or do they shapeshift into different?
Absolutely. Oh, well, yeah. Good question. Good question. They have they're on the losing side, so they have camouflage now that makes them look like us. And at the same time, they're refugees. The ones you see on the news are refugees. The ones you see on the TV and the movie stars are our friends. They are turncoats and traitors to their side and defected to the human side. They're mostly extinct. They
Is
are
this, if I
completely
sorry, is
destroyed.
this why so many immigrants have not been accounted for in their own respective country? And then all of a sudden, there's just a massive occurrence of, like, I'm not saying all of them, but certain humans coming into like the West or into Europe, they have no record of being alive within their country, and it's just like they come out of nowhere.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, I mean, it's not like they're not kind of VIPs. It's more Men in Black at that point. It's
Right.
not so much current politics, but it's more Men in Black, and how Men in Black had already established the fact that most of what it does is process legal immigration to the world, into our civilization, because what the reptilian situation is, they're persona non grata. Their species is at war with the Ashtar High Command, which is like a coalition of races, the Galactic Light Federation's solar warden. Basically, it's like I said, you got to separate the politics from the military. There's NATO, and then there's the UN. You
Right.
know, and it's the UN doesn't have bombs, but NATO does. And
Mm,
when the UN, exactly, when NATO
yeah.
says go UN, it will use the UN. And it's saying the Galactic Federation of Light is the political ambassador, peace, like, your republic, your high republic, your age of that. So this multi-species, galaxy spanning, dimension spanning group of light beings, right?
Right.
And their military is the Ashtar High Command. And specifically, the race that we deal with within the Ashtar High Command are the Venusians, which have been calling themselves the Pleiadians. That's kind of their military thing. They're not going to really tell you their true name, but people have kind of started calling them the Pleiadians, but they're the Venusians. They came as the Venusians. Thor,
Are,
Valiant Thor was
but
a
they're from
Venusian.
they're from Venus.
Yeah, they're from Venus. Exactly. They all the it's much more complicated than these are just distant rocks orbiting a star. It's but yeah, their world was exactly like our world. They got into a war with Mars. They ended up destroying each other's planets. They themselves kind of paid the price for being so warlike, because now they have to lead the Galactic Federation of Light's military. Because when they were saved by the Galactic Federation of Light, they were only good for one thing, and that is holy war, good war.
Mm,
They can actually fight just wars, and that they have a very noble spirit within war. Uh, they are great ambassadors of light, but this is why they are like the military component in the military. They're basically the sword of the Galactic Light Federation.
God.
Now, they got into a war with the reptilians. The reptilians obviously are parasitic. The reptilians transgressed a taboo, which was they allied with basically dark energy vampires. To put it simply, this is kind of a hard way to describe, but they are dark energy vampires. And they were given the gift of vampirism, of energy vampirism, made famous in the latest Star Wars movie, where if you force vampirize somebody, you can heal and sustain your life basically eternally.
Right.
Right? It's not true immortality, but it's damn near close.
Mm.
And these dark energy vampires don't exist in a physical dimension, right? But they have to survive off physical beings and the loosh we create. They taught them the arts of loosh, right? And these beings were discovered internally in the earth because because reptilians have hundreds of planets. They have planetoids. They had Earth, uh, Mars, and Jupiter completely conquered. And Jupiter has like, I don't know, 60 something moons.
Wow. Wow.
You know, I think it's 60, 67 moons. And the asteroid belts, they have a much larger empire than humanity can even imagine, like on scale wise, right? And like populations in the trillions, the hundreds of trillions. Their main fortress and stronghold was Earth. Humans evolved on Earth while the reptilians were already here mining it, processing it, enjoying it as a colony, as a fortress world.
Right.
Humans were an aberration, a glitch in their matrix. We have souls now. Because we had souls, this was very valuable to them, because then there was a loosh, they could then get us and then make a deal with these energy vampires and process it that way. But at the same time, they acquired the same taste. And before you know what, they had the slave population which they were farming. But because they were having to keep us a secret because of our souls, that was the taboo.
Mm.
And then once the Galactic Light Federation found out, they sent the Astra High Command to wage war on the reptilians. Reptilians got in deeper with the vampires, trying to figure out how they unlock some ancient technology. They developed the black goo, the 4D black goo.
Right. The
That is
programmable matter, as they call it, right?
the black replicatable programmable matter. That
Right.
it's actually quantum, and it can shift and actually, how do I say this? Okay, Tenet.
Right. Right.
Tenet. They kind of talked about how things can have radiation signals go into the past. Same thing with the fucking black goo. They can somehow operate the black goo where its effects work both forward and backward. And yes, I know it's complicated, because that's the same thing that exactly like okay, so like it's Inception level, and it's like Tenet in the levels of complexity, because you're dealing with things both on psychic and levels, and like astral levels, which are like dream levels, and like the levels in Inception, where you keep going into these realities that it creates, and the realities that it creates are like pocket realities inside other realities. And you asked me earlier how many people have had that process done to them. 100 million, because it is that easy as Inception.
Wow.
Where it's just, you get a person, you get them to agree to the process, you lay them down, you plug them in to the you jack them into the matrix like Neo. You just sit in a chair and then jack you into the plug, and now you're in the matrix. And the matrix is exactly like Inception, in which the deeper you go, the levels you go, they are real realities.
Right.
And but this is how humans started getting kind of introduced as a species to it, right? And like I said, it's like Tenet, in which now you have weapons working from one pocket dimension into another, where what happens in one reality can now affect another.
Right.
If an atom bomb goes off in one reality, it goes off in all realities.
So this is why aliens seem to be so concerned with our nuclear warheads.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's because this was the Pandora's box that was opened. This was in essence, the idea of like forbidden fruit, or the idea of the ultimate taboo that the reptilians crossed. Because once they've waged war on all dimensions, then not only did the one reality's Astra High Command show up, but multiple dimensional realities of the Astra High Command showed up, like Rick and Morty style. Right. Well, not only did one Rick showed up, but then thousands of them show up, and then they're like an infinite amount of them, and they're all like different, but not really. Like like exactly like the Rick and Morty level, where it's not just one show up, because if you're a big enough threat, then all of them will respawn. And so now you had that level of shit going on. And as you have to kind of think, why would the reptilians have lost? It's because of that. Meanwhile, human beings are getting kind of like, we've already were raised basically to be smart and to have souls and to have like abilities. that's when we made first contact, of course, with the Ashtar High Command, and the Great Reset occurred. The original plan for humanity was to leave us in the dark. We were like, imagine like the whole world's bombed up. Reptilians are basically underground, hiding in their little bunkers.
Right.
Their population has been reduced to 99% have been killed. They're going to find that 1% in the next. That's why it's been in total domination at this point, right?
Right.
Mankind, they were going to leave us in the dark. They were just going to, like, if you find a dog in a war zone.
But when you say, sorry, if I could just clarify, when you say that humankind or mankind was a glitch in the matrix, were we the result of or an accidental result of a genetic experiment of some type, or
controversial? It's hard to say. It does seem that way. There's
right.
enough evidence to suggest that very thing. There's enough evidence to suggest that very thing. The Greys are very interested in us because of that. But genetics is so complex. It's much more complex than people think about. Men in white coats do not have mastered genetics. Genetics is like something that you could really go into, and that is like Halo level. Like, we don't even know if everyone's DNA was manipulated. Like this could be not only did we get created, but we could have been created by the same force that created the reptilians, and that or all life, and that's why it kind of goes back to, I don't know all the mysteries, and that's one of the big mysteries still, even in the circles of the secret space program, even in the scientific circles. Remember, it's not that we have less mysteries, it's we have more mysteries, and we have only the kind of like every question we answer, we have 100 more.
Right. Now I wanted to ask as well too, with respects to Admiral Byrd, Antarctica, Hollow Earth, and all that. Is there a difference between the beings that live within Agartha and the reptilians?
Yes, the beings that live in Agartha are human beings. Like I said, the Notwaffen. They are the human base of the Notwaffen, the human colony of the Notwaffen, which is Night Fleet, which is the Dark Fleet. I don't like calling them the Dark Fleet because it makes them sound so one-sided, and we shouldn't treat people in two dimensions.
Right.
They have their motivations and they have their agenda. These human beings allied with the reptilians.
Okay.
And the reason why they allied with the reptilians is because they were given good treatment, Agartha, in an effort to, this is going to sound very complicated. You got to think of it in a very real way. If you're losing a war,
right,
you want to create a weapon the same that is beating you, equal to what's beating you.
Right.
Remember, humans were discovered in this war, but the Ashtar High Command is Venusian, which is very human.
Got you.
They used humans to try to create Venusians in the way that they gave them the physical regiment for exercise. They gave them the diet. They gave them architecture and culture, as they had already gathered in their intelligence on the Venusians, which, remember, are the major race, basically, from this solar system. But they existed in a weird way where they were basically destroyed from this plane due to their own war and saved spiritually, like kind of just teleported away from the moment by the Galactic Federation of Light, who saved basically their species and made them nomadic. Venus is a wasteland. Venus is a toxic wasteland because of that war. So when we go there, there's just ruins. We don't even know, we can't even find anything, no remains, because that's how bad they messed up their planet. Same with Mars. And so it's the level there. But they are from this solar system. Like, this is their backyard. They're from this dimension.
So do the Venusians have any home planet at this point, or are they mobile?
No. They're mobile. They're like a nomadic race, but it's not like they are like nomadic and bad off. They fly in these perfect paradise ships. They can convert solar energy to 0 point energy. It's kind of incredible, their civilization. And I spent a lot of my secret space program experience the baseline existence, because it's spread off into different little monads. that's what I said. Like, yes, you go 20 years and back
Right.
as a baseline existence. Remember, you're already broken off from your original.
Right.
And I don't know if you know advanced mathematics, like calculus, where you have primes.
Yep.
Like there's a and or there's like delta, then there's delta prime, and then delta. Like, and it keeps going on as
Right.
derivatives of each other in different subsets.
Right.
Now the subsets have already been created when you're first given the treatment, the processing treatment. I had my first experience when I was 9 years old. As a child, my lab experience, military members from the Navy, an officer dress came to me, in my bedroom, gave me the promise. You want to be, like in a video game? Do you want to be in space? Specifically, do you want to be an X-Man?
Right. Right. Now, if I could
But
ask very quickly, before you go on, my audience, I think they would love to hear the way in which young people like yourself were recruited. Did
oh yeah,
they usually go for, they went at, for example, family members who have had members in the military? Like how do they filter through
oh, yeah.
and say, okay, we're going to go to this kid, or we're going to go to this one or that one?
Like I said, they already know your genetic history. They
Got
already know your family history.
Okay.
This is nothing new to them. There's no wild in person off their system. Everyone's on their system. And
Right.
yes, the deal has already been made. The ink is already dry in regards to who they can take and when they can take them and how they can take them. The caveat has always been it has to be their choice,
Right.
right? It has to be something that the person selected asks for at some point in this experience, right?
Okay.
The situation with that, though, is that it's oftentimes extremely manipulated to the point that that's just kind of like an arbitrary thing.
They make
Like
it feel like it's a choice when it really isn't.
it really is. They asked me at 9 years old if I wanted to be an X-Man.
Ah, I see
That's
what
what I'm saying. And
yeah,
you're like, yeah, I want to be an X-Man. And all right, well now we got you to consent to the whole soul transfer
right.
and enjoy the 20-year and back 120 different varieties of alternate realities of your life that you're going to go through. So 120 20 years of peace.
Right. So if I may ask, could you very like if you'd be willing to, could you go through the process of what you personally witnessed and went through? If that's like just the broad strokes, the things you
I've
feel
already, yeah,
most
yeah.
significant that my audience would probably need to hear the most.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so the long story short, I was 9 years old, couldn't sleep, right? And this was late at night, well past midnight. So you get this idea like children when they're awake for a long time get into a state of like insomnic hypnosis.
Right.
Best represented on film in the movie Get Out.
Got you. Yeah.
When the guy is recalling as a child staring at TV static and not being able to move in a chair. It
Yes.
was one of those experiences, and that's absolutely a real horrific case in children. It's like sleep paralysis, but they are awake.
Right.
Now, this was going on, and I was asleep, or not asleep. I couldn't sleep in my bedroom, but I was in my bed alone, lights off, and then the lights came on, but I hadn't turned them on. No one had opened the door. Now, this is how my mental process is going on, how am I recovering the memories? Because, and this is the big deal. People came into my room, men wearing U.S. naval uniforms, dressed blues.
Holy.
They were officers.
Wow.
If you ever have been in the Navy, you know exactly that they are tall men who usually make up the officer corps. They are like the people they want you to see, the people who look like they should be on movies, like the people who look, and these people came, and I'm assuming they were a child psychology team or people who had extreme experience in this field before. So these people, like recruiters, are a specialized, element in the MyLab process. They didn't try to act like extraterrestrials. They didn't try to act like anything untowards like that. And they came into my room. They came up to my bed. They were just kind of inspecting my room, casually looking around. The same exact fucking mannerisms as someone who knows that they're just this is something that you like. It's very routine to them. Very routine to them.
Got
They
you.
didn't have any fear of being caught. There was no secrecy behind it. Then the guy just sat in my bed and started talking to me. He knew my name, and he was like, "You're a very smart child. You're doing really well in school." And as someone who I'm 9 years old. It is 1996,
Right.
right? Like, thank you. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. Like, hey, this is weird but cool. Like I'm one of those kids who, when looking back, this is why I don't think there's anybody who's free, or it's not free will, because you're told and programmed as a child. And this is one of the ways they do it. You watch GI Joe, about the military. You want to be a good person, soldier, American. It's all the same word to you, right? And that's like, you have a deep, profound respect for the culture you're born into, and you want you want this. And I
Mm.
had X-Men comics and like cards and the whole X-Men thing. And he's all like, "Hey, you want to be a superhero? You want to be an X-Man?"
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah."
Right.
Like, yeah, like hell yeah, like I'm 9 years old. Sign me. Like that's exactly, what I'm saying? Like yeah, of course. Like let's go fight the bad guys, and let's go
Right.
like and that was the moment where the whole process started. I remember a lot of it now recovered it self-hypnosis style with the hemisync tactic, where you put two ping pong balls and look at a red light and you listen to static, and then you eventually receive these images, these kinds of like communications of, in my case, my own past. And this reality was at 9 years old, being given no extraordinary medical treatment. It's just there was this white room that seemed to be out immediately out of the hallway. This was not, I don't think, in our physical reality at this point. This was because you can cross planes, walk, dimensional shift in any freaking uniform, any shirt. And this is where it gets kind of like to the point where it was no different than as if you were getting processed by a doctor on Earth. Just
Gotcha.
a doctor's visit in the middle of the night to a 9-year-old. Test your reflexes, look in your ear, look in your mouth, stand up, bend over, touch your toes, got your back thing, checked everything. Okay, he's good to go. And then that point was kind of like the beginning of the end of the world, because the next thing I remember in this physical reality is waking up and having no idea how no one else had heard that or seen that, going into the kitchen. And, of course, everyone's just cooking breakfast. Everything is normal. I'm already dressed. Same exact kind of like situation every morning, right?
Mm.
Like,
Right.
like literally just every other day.
Yeah.
Nothing new. So I just went along with the program. And like any dream, you kind of forget about it, right? Like any
Right.
experience at night, you just kind of put it out of your head.
Exactly.
At that point, though, I'd already served my 120 and 20, and been brought back that very night,
Wow.
living my life with the constant shepherding and guidance and interaction by U.S. Navy intelligence figures in the state-run schools and the public schools. I was rewarded for my service by being given college. I didn't do anything wrong. I actually served with honor, and I had a lot of accolades, and I was considered an extremely good member of Solar Warden, just to put it very bluntly. And so I was given a very limited amount of reward in life, including a free college, a total scholarship to college, through academic reasons and everything, which I'm entirely certain was just given to me. Like I'm entirely certain it was just kind of like, hey, we hooked you up with this kid. And
Got-
then I was given a military service and given a very preferential and quite cool like little tour of duty, and then given disability after an honorable discharge, and then given kind of like a cush ride with it. This all started to kind of fall apart when I started recovering my memories and
Mm.
wanting to speak about it, wanting to write about it, wanting to have to get this out of my chest.
Right.
And then I started seeing things like the VA took away my disability because they said I owed them back taxes from a state that I lived in 10 years ago.
It's interesting. Former people who former soldiers. seem to have issues with the VA every time they want to talk about something that's even considered to be a little bit controversial. Like, I mean, I know a few others, including yourself, that seem to have this issue. But is there anything within the secret space program that you can recall that you feel
Oh
is
no, yeah, of course.
significant?
No,
Did
no,
you?
yeah. Let me get
Right.
into that. Yeah, the recovered memories that I'm getting. Like I said, between the ages of 9 to 23, I had another visitation by the Greys. That was definite. It was unmistakable visitation by the Greys. Was when I was in Pensacola. That was when I was given my basically last processing, last treatment. I finally broke out of the whole thing around 2016. That's when I was fully released and I got my memories back starting from 2016 to now. This is
Gotcha.
why I'm just now kind of coming out with it. And people might say, well, if you got abducted when you were a child, why? It actually was. Always had a lifelong fascination with UFOs, always had a lifelong fascination with the military, always had a lifelong fascination with aviation, always had a lifelong fascination with, real science fiction, reading books from the 50s and things like that when you was in middle school, like Starship Troopers.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Now, just
That,
curious, very quickly before you go on, is the thing with your memories coming back, is this something they cannot control? They have no control
no,
over? Okay,
it's something I'm actually pursuing. It's not like I'm flooded by memories as much as I want to be. I
got
used to. That's how it started.
right,
It
right,
started with the full on like Vietnam flashbacks from a world that could not have possibly existed type thing.
gotcha.
Like a full on like I'd be fishing and then just start having these memories and flashbacks of like a battlefield on Mars where I was like fighting a centipede, and of course people might think that's just your no, these were vivid like near hallucination, what I could best describe as like a Vietnam flashback.
Got
Like
yeah,
whenever you see something like the Charlie's in the trees type thing, where you're
got
like your PTSD level. That people don't understand PTSD is a very complex psychological thing, and it manifests itself in many ways. And I've had PTSD since getting out, honorably discharged, but there was really no explanation for it. But it was never questioned. They knew it. Like in the Navy, they were like, yes, and they just gave me the rating and they let me go.
wow.
Because I was thinking it's very well. I mean, the whole Navy experience, the real physical reality experience, was very charmed in that kind of sense. I
Mm,
ate dinner with the captain at one point, and the captain's table,
whoa,
and because the base captain, because I was working double shifts for multiple days in a row on preparing F-18s to be deployed in a secret front on Yemen, and this was during Libya. This was during the beginning of Syria. This was the beginning of the 2010 era, 2011, 2012, 2013 era, uh, uh, beginning of the offensives that were occurring that would later become ISIS, that would later become the war on Yemen, that would later become the killing of Gaddafi,
so you're saying, just to
things like that.
clarify, you're saying you knew about ISIS many, many years before
Oh yeah,
the vast majority of the world?
yeah,
And
yeah.
just curious, how did you, were you
Informative.
smart enough to put this together for yourself, or were you given a document? Were you told? What was what happened there?
Actually, started figuring it out myself. That the information is not really privileged as need to know, of course, but there was a lot of chatter and a lot of documentation for things like resupply parts, orders, things like that. And of course, galley talk. You hear the scuttlebutt. You hear, and that's the thing. It was a secret war. It was an absolute secret war. At the time, it actually was secret, and the entire loose lips sink ships type thing. But at the same time, we were getting daily briefs on OPSEC, operation security, you know, information, ideas of like security clearance and stuff. And that's a very serious man. It's very charmed. I had a very good but relatively cush experience inside the real world of aviation warfare, but as a enlisted maintenance officer who was actually, kind of able to kind of exist in a place where he could hear and see everything, and at the same time be kind of out of the way enough not to be consumed by it.
And
And that's
this was after the secret space program, correct?
yeah, this is in my adulthood in this 3D reality. In this, because it's very Vedic. The senses that you see in this linear path of time, the thing that brings me and you, thing that makes us intersect and communicate right now, is the fact that we are on this reality together. But
Right.
in other realities, you can exist in those timelines, and they'll loop you back. So, an experience of the secret space program. Hold on one second. Okay, an experience of the secret space program that I can really speak about. When I was sitting as a 9-year-old child, it starts immediately. It starts immediately. You are immediately indoctrinated and put through boot camp, and it's a brutal boot camp. It is a brutal process, physically demanding. Many people die. That's just the case. Many people do die. About 3 out of 10 die through the course of just training alone, because you start from as young as 6 years old to as old as 22, I believe, was the oldest recruit age back then. Now, this was in the 90s. Now, there are different generations of recruits, but the whole recruiting element started in the 50s and 60s.
Gotcha.
It's like the secret space program, but the United States Navy started after Valiant Thor included us into the Ashtar High Command when he came and visited Eisenhower during the Greada Treaty.
Oh, I
You
see.
know,
I wanted to
we were
ask.
then allowed. No, we were then allowed the technology as a nation, as a species, and this is filtered down to Solar Warden. Remember, Solar Warden doesn't fly under any nation's flag, but it's mostly made up of Americans.
Okay.
It's like mostly traditionally, culturally American. And for what it's worth, it has all nationalities and all peoples of the world. The thing with them is that they draw their enlisted ranks not from the same place they draw their officer corps.
Okay.
It's a segregated society. The officer corps are specially bred, pedigreed people in
Right.
America. They typically recruit from the Mormon church. They typically recruit from that area. So I don't really know how their enlistment process works. It's also how you understand how military families work. That
That's
they're in for
that you
life, that
say
they
that.
are lifers. They have different, I don't know if they remember or if they have any kind of thing. They have their own, these are high ranking Freemasons, sons, daughters, things like that. Like this is the process they're going through, right? I know that they have greater psychic abilities than the average person. I know that they are able to pilot the ships, which is something that normal people are just not allowed to do. Now, to tell you the difference behind that, they are allowed to really kind of freely live in contact with extraterrestrials. Thing is, though, nobody has really any business doing that. So even if you're in the Solar Warden program, even if you're in the secret space programs, typically your experience will vary greatly. Now, I can tell you about mine, but I'm also going to try to like hit on the different points between human experience and the Solar Warden. As an enlisted person, you are basically a slave. You have no ability to control your actions at any level, ever, for 20 years.
Holy shit.
You may be given comforts. You may be given creature comforts. You may be given a blind eye here or there to go do something on your own volition. But by that time, you will be so indoctrinated and beaten out of you, you will not have the imagination or volition to do anything that they have not already told you could do.
Right.
The thing is this, they keep it extremely disciplined because this is a military effort. Like I said, there's two kinds. There's Atlantis Rising, and there's Solar Warden, and there's the Dark Fleet, and there's the ICC. The ICC is the corporation, the interstellar corporation conglomerate, right? Like it's businesses.
Right.
It's the space truckers, it's the miners, it's things like that. They actually have free living colonists out in space, and they are mostly automated by now. But it's kind of weird because they don't ever let anyone who works for them ever come back home.
Huh.
So it's different. Everyone is controlled in different ways. Now, I was not in the ICC. ICC uses slaves, like straight up lobotomized freaking slaves.
Wow.
Like exactly, you're just a pair of hands that can kind of function where, and they're automating it. They're phasing people out of the system. Exactly. By now, it's mostly computer.
Wow.
Mostly machine. Exactly. ICC tries to keep the manpower at a minimum. Think of Total Recall.
Right.
That's the ICC. They don't let anyone kind of go home.
Oh,
But people are living on Mars.
are
And
they
then
are they told, are those set of people told, listen, you're not coming back to Earth?
yeah, they absolutely know that they are not allowed. As I said, the only way to be yourself is if you're given a one-way ticket.
Gotcha.
And because it's not like you can just get into a spaceship and fly,
Right.
that there is a highly regulated airspace, for example, and it doesn't work that way. There is no chance of an average person kind of coming back, but I do believe that will be the case sooner or later. But there's a lot of history between us, the colonies, and the early days. But the average enlisted person is treated much like a glorified dog.
Huh.
They're given all the comforts, but they're expected to perform a task and to be extremely loyal, right? And so
Right.
whenever you see a lot of um, people who speak about the solar space program and talk about personal freedoms, I don't think that's always a missed thing. Is that there's not a lot of free abject thinking. So most of my experiences are kind of just witnessed, and
Right.
everything is happening to me, right? Now, the one thing that I remember is my baseline had a lot of psychic potential. That was the thing that they tested. Was I was able to basically predict answers to questions and attain extremely high test scores on subjects I shouldn't have known anything about, and it
Got,
beat probability, because it wasn't that I have knowledge, it's the fact that I can predict the right answer through a psychic level of just being like, I can find like like the rat to the cheese.
right.
Like it's not
Yeah.
that I have some kind of knowledge of the map. I have a psychic link to the cheese.
You can find the needle in the haystack, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And so this psychic ability, it's latent in everybody. Everybody's got it, but people have it. They only really kind of focus on the people who it's already strong in. And
Right.
I really don't want to keep saying it, but Star Wars, the last couple of Star Wars films were very much straight up disclosure when it came up to that level where it's like, you know, if you're a Force user, you can sense other Force users.
Right.
Like the
Yeah.
Force is
Yeah.
strong in this one. That's exactly what they do. Everyone can do it, and they kind of make a point that anyone can just become like a psychic, Jedi. But it's specifically at this point where they're like, I sense some, disturbance. Right? Oh, this guy's strong. They only want the strong ones because they're not going to waste their time with. They don't really have. This was more of like an experiment on their part. Where
Got,
the Venusians and the Ashtar High Command wanted a foreign exchange program.
okay.
And this is what I'm remembering the most. I have several different timelines that I'm remembering, but the one I'm remembering the most recently is being kind of given like in a foreign exchange program to the Ashtar High Command
Hmm.
and the Venusians, and living amongst them, learning their culture and learning their ways, and the kind of cultural exchange of humans into their society to be educated on the nuances of their psyche, in which, like I said, there's so much to this education and involving process. It's not like you can be an ignorant alien
Right.
in
Yeah.
the community. It's not like you can be ignorant on any level of their society. But the thing is, it's like getting Encino Man and putting them in like Victorian age England,
Right.
and then teaching him how to do a tea party. And he's all like, but you're trying to civilize them. And it's
Right.
that level where they're like, we're trying to civilize you. We're super patient. And we know we're not going to excite you. We're going to
Right.
try to teach you. This is like Earl Grey tea, and you have to have a refined palate. And this is, or the appreciation for the finer things. And like, in their life, at the same time, they are not Victorian. their culture is very reminiscent to Native Americans and a type of Gaia-centered, nature-centered peoples that like Amazonians or like, but they're extremely advanced. This is a choice.
It's a choice, right?
It's
Right.
their choice because you're living in an artificial forest created out of crystals.
And you're sorry,
that process sunlight.
just to clarify, you're referring to the Venusians.
The Venusians.
Oh, and just very quickly, before you go on, based on your memories, do they look literally identical to us, or are they? Because if we look at, for example, Valiant Thor and his crew that he brought,
they look identical to us.
They look identical. With that being said, though, is there anything based on your memory, facial features, a physical feature, anything that might make you think if you look close enough, or no?
They have. In their natural culture, they will never really, remember, this is how it's always presentation, it's always diplomacy.
Right.
They'll always communicate with us in ways that make us feel comfortable. They wore our clothes on their first meeting with us, Valiant Thor. They used what they thought, looking from an outsider looking in, what we would understand.
Gotcha.
And they kind of did like their alien like study, and they were like, Valiant Thor looks like a good name. They have 2 names. They wear a business suit. That's how they wear their hair like this. This is, they made themselves look like us. Their natural look is long hair. They typically do not cut their hair. Their men typically do not cut their beards. They are typically very tall, very fit, very agile, and they love tattoos. And here's the thing, they will put really amazing artwork on their bodies, but yes, they do have an idea of clothing, but from my own experience, they are kind of aesthetic. They're kind of minimalist.
Gotcha.
In a way that like ancient Sparta is, or like how Native Americans would just kind of walk around nude.
Right.
Because it's not like it's not a sign of primitiveness. It's a sign of freedom. It's a sign of liberty.
Right.
And like our ancient Gallic people just never wore a shirt.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But they'd have like jewels in their hair, like in their braids.
So in other words, what you're saying is that they're advanced enough to do it, but it's a choice to not do it.
Yes. And that, yes, exactly. They are absolutely libertine. They are free. They have a very, it's strange society in which they don't have any taboos, but at the same time, they have a lot of aesthetic and beauty standards. And they are not primitive, but they live very simply, very freely. They don't, like I said, the place that we lived was a combination beach and forest. And these were artificial biomes that were created to be paradises for us to kind of receive our education, much the same way that their children receive their education. Right. So, because I remember I'm 9 years old, I think I'm 10 years old at this point. This is very close to the actual point of me entering the service. This was a lifelong effort on their part.
Before you go on, just curious, is there, and I'm asking this more for my audience, is there a difference between them and the Nordics or the tall whites, so to speak?
Okay, so there are 2 tall whites, 2 different versions of the tall whites. There are the tall white Arcturans or Syrians. They go by many names, but they're the grays. They look like grays. They have large dark eyes, but they have very white skin. Sometimes they have hair.
Blend in with us or no?
They are on Earth. But they are located on Earth.
If they walk down the street with a hat on and sunglasses or whatever, would we even notice or no?
The Nordic, the second one, is a Argarthan. That is an Agarthan representative of society. They do intermingle with us. They do walk around with us, but they said that's no different than saying like a very purebred member of humanity, a different pedigree of humanity. When people see a lot of Nordics, they're actually seeing reptilians taking the disguise of Nordics. Because if a reptilian's going to look like a human being, they're going to look like the best looking human being they can.
Right, right. Okay. Sorry, please go on. Sorry to interrupt. I didn't mean to get cut
And exactly, no, that's a good question to ask. And you're right. Why do they always look like these Hollywood movie stars? It's
right.
because they know that they have to present an image, and if they're going to look like anyone, it's going to look like a movie star. Now, Men in Black is very honest with the fact that most aliens have disguises. Most aliens are not allowed to walk around and disrupt the peace. They have to wear human disguises, holographic disguises. Han, purple, indigo, nine, holographic recalibration, all
Right.
of that, meat suits, animatronics, everything. It's been going around for years, so they have a lot of experience in making suits for everyone. But every alien has to have some kind of suit if they are willing to live in our society as a refugee, as a political prisoner, as just a visitor, as a tourist, right? We can't say no to them because they have, they can just reveal themselves, and then it becomes a fucking pain in the ass. But that does happen a lot, actually, where aliens do just walk around as aliens, and it's covered up because
And
they're
very
just all
quick,
like,
right, very quickly, if I could just ask, are these the same? Not all of them, but are some of them coming here as visitors, like the Venusians and what have you? Are they the ones that give the diplomats with the secret base in Kazakhstan the go ahead on disclosure? Are they the
oh yeah,
one? Or
no, exactly, yes. The Venusians are now our go-to to the Galactic Federation.
okay, oh, just want to
Having
clarify.
already made the journey themselves, they are the shepherds, the mentors for us to attain our ascendancy and our enlightenment. They're our responsibility, or we are now their responsibility,
Got
right?
you.
Because they wanted to save us. They already are ordered to save us. This is not in their choice, but they have to. So this is why I was saying this was an experiment on theirs. They need to educate us. They need to ascend us because it's their orders
Right.
coming from other, even weirder aliens, right? Even
Got
more powerful beings. Uh, but this is, like I say, the difficulties of intergalactic societies, right? Of societies that have hundreds of different species and races and power levels and technology levels. Like a class 3 civilization could be telling the class 2 civilization what to do, and try, and their order is to make a class 1 civilization a class 2 civilization like them if they want to be a class 3. And that's how I think the actual motivation scale is. Yeah, you're familiar with the I think it's the Kazmanov scale system,
yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
where it's the different types of societies, and it's like, a class 4 society uses power intergalactic levels. Class 1 is on our planet, and it's the ranking between them. That's what I think is going on, is that a class 4 society is telling the class 2 society to make the class 1 a 2, and then the 2 will then be elevated into a 3, and that's what the Ashtar High Command want.
So very,
And
very quickly, but before you go on, if I could just ask as well too, is it true that the Venusians interfered through telepathy during the Cuban Missile Crisis with Kennedy?
yes, the Venusians, exactly. They interfere into people's dreams. They've
Okay.
rewritten culture. They are the ones that give the people the true knowledge. Like, everyone says that knowledge was given to us by the fallen angels.
Right.
This
Right.
is what they're talking about.
Gotcha. I had a feeling. I honestly thought it was some of the.
Everything from language to makeup
Go-
was given to us by, no, it was a great reset.
Oh no,
And the choice
I'm
was,
laughing because I
yeah,
believe it. That's what I'm saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the Great Reset, and they really did go. You know what? We have to do something. We have to kind of raise these people up, and they have given us their culture to kind of mirror their culture. The thing is, we are also able to choose for ourselves. We have free will, and so the option's always on the table. And if you look at it, it has always been there. Like, Native Americans learned from the star people, from the blue star people, the indigo star people, the
Right.
wing makers. They
Right.
had given the Venusians had given them the information and how to live their lives. Native Americans mimicked their lifestyle on the Venusians.
Got you.
The
Now
Native Americans were not killed off by disease. They were taken by Venusians.
I okay. I see what you're. That makes sense. The
There
okay.
are ships with Native American tribes living peacefully in paradise with Venusians.
Wow.
This is they're more advanced at the communication. Exactly. When I went, I wasn't the first and only human being they'd ever experiment or try to teach. And I'm saying, when they try to teach me about their culture, it started from everything from their songs to their
Right.
language to their myths. to their jokes,
What did the
to
what did the
their way
what did
they
the
dress.
the environment, what did it look like? Were you on a beach? Were you on a in a city? Were you
It was a basically a paradise in which I think a lot of it was hologram
okay,
because it seemed to be wherever you were, the world kind of moved around you. And that was kind of like a very surreal element. But you could see this amazing sky above. And I'm not even sure that it was a real direct view to the sky, the stars, which
gotcha.
was always in a state of permanent night, no matter how much light level was in the room. And it
Huh,
was bright inside. We had our natural day and night cycles for our cardiac rhythms and
right.
everything. But you would always see the stars the same way you always see the moon outside during a blue sky.
Got so, and at what point, I this is, I promise, this is the last time I'll interrupt you. At
Oh,
what point did the Venusians step in at this point when they, for example, when they see conflicts like, what happened a few years ago in Ukraine, where, Russia, was going against the CIA, but through asymmetrical warfare, and, people were dying and there was civil war. And, or for example, right now, what's going on with Myanmar with the coup and all that. Did they only step in when absolutely necessary if humanity's on the brink of destruction globally? So do they kind of leave us
yeah.
alone in terms of internal conflicts?
All conflicts on Earth between men are theater.
Okay.
All war is a charade. It is
Okay.
a real theater in which real people die,
Right.
but it is ultimately all controlled by powers like AI, like superpowers like the United States, like I said. And so that something like the Ukraine skirmish of 2014 for Crimea,
Right.
that
Right.
was simply to fill the mind's eye of the masses and to discourage and to kind of put a bad vibe in people's minds when it is to looking at, like, say, world peace or the true nature of the world. We are really consolidated at a very extreme level into one system of unity, the New World Order. There, like I said, there was some issue with nuclear weapons. That was
Okay.
in the 50s and 60s. There was some issue with rogue nation states. That was still, though, all theater. Since World War II, there have been a lot of behind the scenes things which are undeniable, like when Nixon visited China.
Right.
After that, China and the US have been absolutely allied.
Would you
Everything is a theater between our two countries.
So for example,
Everything.
I've been saying this on my show. Would you say that, for example, what's occurring within the Muslim Uyghur camps, the CIA has a hand in it?
That's to get the process. Okay, so that's another thing about the secret space program. Like everything that happens on Earth in that kind of regard of really nasty
Yeah.
human violation and stuff like that is in some way, shape, or form attached to the secret space program. Every major black budget military project is in some way, shape, or form attached to the secret space program.
The drug.
Every major military mobilization is recovering technology or consolidating technology or territory. Oh, discovered or given access to us by the secret space program, or dealing and cleaning up something from a rogue element inside that program.
Gotcha.
Um, okay, so in the regard of the Uyghur camps, we have a Griota treaty. The treaty is specifically between us and the Greys. The Greys are going to give us technology and teach us a lot of advanced astrology and astronomy, and because it's really complicated mathematics. And how do you think our fields of astronomy have grown exponentially over the last 20 years or 100 years? It's
Right.
not because there's money in it to look out to deep space. It's
Right.
because we're being fed theorems and algorithms and technologies that are extremely complex, and Greys work with inside the Ashtar High Command as kind of like a rogue nuisance because they don't have any spirituality because they're clones,
Right.
right? But they're kept from doing any real harm because of force of arms, right? And as long as they remain neutral, but the thing is, remember, they remain neutral through deals. They have a deal with us. Give us 0.0001% of your population's bodily organs,
Right.
and we're going to just give us their biomass.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you might think that sounds really weird for them to put that in the deal. And at the same time, a government power might go, why do you want so few people? But when it comes to 7 billion people, really do the math.
Yeah.
7 billion times 0.0001. That
Right.
number is the number of people put through the Uyghur camps. That number is the same number of people who go missing in America every year.
Holy shit.
That number is the same people who go missing globally.
Wow.
It may be a million people, but we have 7 billion human beings, and 0.001 times 7 billion is like 3 million people. And you're like, holy fucking shit. And you're like, the Greys are going like, yeah, just give us like their organs and we'll give you guys fucking time travel.
Wow. Now, the one thing before we probably have about another 20, 30 minutes before we got to end this, but I did want to ask the correlation, if there is any, between the deep underground military bases, how deep it goes. Do any of them connect to Agartha, as well as the secret space program, secret space program, you name it? Anything of the sort?
Of course. So when people talk about the secret space program, of course, it's in the name, space. I kind of want to call it something else because it's kind of misnomer for space. It involves the hollow earth and it involves the oceans.
Okay.
Now, I follow a Vedic understanding of cosmology due to my experience with the SSP, which is we live basically on an infinite plane, or a world that's much physically larger than what we are aware of. We live basically on a few islands, if you would look on it, into a giant frozen ocean.
Okay.
With many different continents, many different land masses, many different frontiers and extreme environments.
Right.
Many environments completely, like say, for example, the Pacific Ocean is just one that we're aware of. It's an ocean so large you can fit all the surface area of the world onto or into it and still have room to spare.
Right.
That's like, a water elemental world. This is a place where man is a frontier for. So there are intelligent beings that have evolved there. There are ultra terrestrials. It's not all extraterrestrial. It's all a lot of ultra terrestrials, a lot of multidimensional entities. As we become more psychic, as our latent powers emerge, that has to be factored in because we're communicating with beings. Basically, if you want to say ghosts from ancient, distant civilizations that are immortal, but on psychic levels. As our AI improves, we're dealing with things like returning to us, like a rogue sentient AI, explorers. On the Earth, we have rogue AI currently developing independent like societies and stuff, digitally.
Within what you're saying, within this sub-global deep underground military base network.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like digitally, this is really where the frontier is. When in regards, this is why we're training all those soldiers, is because it's the Wild West, basically. As much of the Wild West was foreign, but it was right in our backyard.
Right.
The oceans, the Arctic, the Antarctic, deep underground facilities, because a lot of these are being discovered. We're not really building so much as we are discovering.
Got you. Right.
Now remember, we are building, but we are also discovering entire labyrinthian networks, bunker complexes that are the size of small countries. It's no easy task to describe that there is a shadow environment that's as the size of the surface of the earth, underneath the earth.
Right. And would you say these deep underground military bases they're not nearly as deep as some of these labyrinth underwater bases?
Well, remember, we're dealing with, so even at the ocean at its deepest,
right?
Because there are inner earth oceans, they connect. They're giant reservoirs,
right?
We got to think of it in real scale. How wide is the earth and the surface of the earth, the environment that we live on? I think they officially say we've gone 7, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14 miles deep, maybe 20 miles deep. What's the deepest hole ever done? Think about it, like what's officially the deepest hole? There are hundreds, if not thousands of miles underground.
Right.
different layers of material, like mantle, like Core. Have you ever seen the movie Core?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Stuff like that. It's Journey to the Center of the Earth level, like, where we are popping up into places that no man has ever set foot on. And yes, Agartha, St. Martin's Land, there are pre-existing societies of human beings that live down there. The Mayan Aztec, a big part of what I experienced in the SSP was fighting the Maya Aztec.
Okay.
In some of my baseline existences, I was just a enlisted, basically a starship trooper, right? I did what I had to do. In most of mine, I was an aviation electrician. Same thing, an aviation intelligence officer, aviation warfare specialist. I dealt with planes, arming them, dealing with their maintenance, securing them basically at that level in the secret space program as well as in real life, right? So anything that flew, fighters, bombers, interceptors, spy planes, utility aircraft, I worked on. And most of the ships that the Solar Warden uses are drone operated aircraft carriers, basically. They just release hundreds of these fucking things and these different platforms. And that's how war is really fought. It's through
Right.
just massive aircraft carrier style tactics, right?
Right.
And this is what clears the way for the Marines to go drop ship in and then start, wiping up. But then we're also, this is a layered bombardment and things like that. But one of the things that we were doing was going into basically the fringe territories, the outposts of the Maya Aztec Remnant Society.
Okay.
They had gone underground. They had allied themselves with reptilians. I'm pretty sure the Agarthans are the same way. Reptile imagery everywhere.
Right.
And it looked exactly like the Maya Aztecs that you would see like in Apocalyptico.
Right.
But they had stone starships. That we were in Hollow Earth. We were not going to the stars. They were just a stone. Because remember, the language I use to explain this to myself and to remember this to myself, I'm having a hard time kind of converting it, to normal people speak.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Aerial vehicles were like the floating pyramids. They were anti-gravity pyramids. They reminded me of the floating rocks in Avatar.
Oh, I get what you. Okay, I think that's a very good visual.
There were these
Yeah.
big pyramids. They just floated around.
Right.
And
Okay.
they were like the Death Star. They just like bolted these fucking beams of energy at people. And they would just knock down craft with one direct hit. But the thing was, they would basically be, very solitary in their. We'd outnumber them, and there'd be like one monolith basically floating around, like these very, like we would attack at night. We would attack in low light conditions. Laser warfare is fucking like a religious experience. It's just these beams of light moving at light speed, filling up the sky with destructive energies, burning the atmosphere. And it's just, we would just release salvos of railguns. And it's like these experiences are like Vietnam flashbacks.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's what I'm saying. These aren't idle. These are very vivid when they come to me. So the language I'm using in my head when I'm remembering it, like when you see it, and it is all from a bystander's viewpoint. It is from the viewpoint that a aircraft person would have, like in World War II. We were running around just trying to do your job and hoping you don't blow up.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, I see.
At the time, and you're fortified and disciplined to a level where you're going at it, and you got your combat drugs working. They got the neural net going, so you're hearing like just music blaring into your ears. And it's like they're getting you in this out of body experience.
Right.
Because what they're doing as well is creating a situation that's so aggressively intense that you're not going to remember it. You're disassociating during that time and operating in a fugue state. So that even when it happens, it's feeling like a dream. And when it's over, like a dream, you begin to instantly replace it with the existence that you're living in. So 20 years of this, 20 years times 120 different timelines, 120 different timelines, 20 years down each line.
With all respect, how do you not, and I ask this very seriously, how do you not go insane with that type of mental torture?
I have a very have the good fortune of being connected to very good astral entities.
Okay.
I firmly believe that there is a God,
Right.
one true God. And I believe that what I saw in the secret space program is exactly what is talked about in the kingdom of heaven and the concepts like that. And I believe that this is all part of some kind of divine plan. But physically, it reminds me of the living through the Vedas, the Hindu religions, when they talked about, say, for example, Vishnu's fighting the demon king in the flying cities and things. If you had physically lived through that,
Right.
you would be as confident as I am about the certainty of these powers. And so the fear and the insanity is not there. The clarity is replaced by clarity. It's replaced by a type of vindication from the sheer undeniability of these things. It's not I'm struggling because I'm trying to comprehend things. It's I'm struggling to express the things that I think everyone should comprehend.
Gotcha.
Disclosure is not difficult for those who already know. Communication is difficult for those that already know.
Right.
And I've already accepted this over many years of frustration, of failed relationships, of the whole classic falling out of quote unquote normal society,
Right.
and basically taking up ascetic hermetism. But I am of the good luck and fortune. I believe my mission on this earth is to be, an insider, a whistleblower, what they used to call a prophet for phenomenon back then, in the old days. And I believe that that's what we're all doing. I believe that's what you're doing, brother. I believe and that's why I'm always very interested in the work that you're doing, because it's the same level of trying to tell the masses
Right.
what's going on. And we know it's real. And we can see how everything lines up to that image where this is real.
Right.
And just because everyone wants to throw things in our way and say it's not real, it's because they just don't remember, or they just will never know. And that's why I'm convinced that this society is a game reserve.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
the same operative principle of saying, like, if you're an animal and you live on a game reserve, like you're a zebra, and then you realize that there are human beings operating at a level of, like, they have helicopters, they have technology, they darted somebody, they put a tag on the air, but no other zebra believes you. You're just an extraordinarily intelligent zebra. Unfortunately, the plight of your species is one of joyful ignorance.
Right.
And this was all designed by higher powers. I can't rebel strong enough to break the conditioning. I can't break out of the matrix, but inside the matrix, I can tell people they are in the matrix.
That's
the reason
a
why
great
I was returned was no fault of my own. There is a thing, you're an extraordinary member of an ordinary tribe.
Okay.
And like I said, if there was a World War II and America needed to draw men from tribes in Africa to go fight and die and be the soldiers, but glorify him, and they gave him all these perks and cargo, and they just told him a good job, and they shook their hands, and you got to see and witness a world that was beyond your possible wildest imagination, and then you were told to go back home. Now, I think it was a gift. This is why they erase our memories, is because we shouldn't go, exactly as service, they erase our memories because so we don't go insane. There's also a huge difficulty in when people come back to their baseline, because like Inception, there's 120 different subsets, layers to your one personality, each living 20 years. It's too much to remember. By the time you leave one level, you kind of are busy forgetting what happened in that other level.
So is this just, if I can ask quickly, is this like harnessing a form of, I guess we could say, past lives, so to speak, or the Akashic records? Is this harnessing that same energy?
Remembering it is Akashic records.
Okay.
Remembering it is all Akashic records. And the Akashic record work that I was doing was, as in yoga, I started listening to gurus around 2016. Like I said, this was 20 years from 1996. So coincidentally, while I was starting to recover memories, I started hearing these gurus, because one of the things I did to cope with the stress that I was receiving from what I thought were just PTSD symptoms was meditate, was do yoga, was to get into the Eastern Oriental type of philosophies, Zen Buddhism, Hinduism, things like that. Started seeing with my own eyes that they take this stuff very seriously.
Right.
Like they in their culture, this is accepted. There are multi dimensions, there are different beings, there are different species. They interact, you interact back, you have spiritual powers. You know, these aren't just dreams you're having, these aren't just fantasies. Like in their culture, it's a legitimate thing. One of the things the yogis I remember hearing about was the Akashic records, and how he said all you have to do is knock, all you have to do is look, all you have to do is ask, and the Akashic records will open themselves to you. Anyone can be a genius, anyone can be the smartest man that they know. All they have to do is think for themselves and to ask the Akashic records to give them the knowledge. And one of the things I remember meditating and asking for was the Akashic records to give me my own memories back, my own life back. Because if I was going to know one thing, it was going to be myself.
Right. Wow. Now, unfortunately, probably got 5-10 minutes left before we wrap this up. I do want to say I'd love to have you on again. I'm sure my audience would too. But is there anything you'd like to say? It doesn't have to be about what we're discussing right now. Is there anything you really want to get out there before I ask my final question to you?
Absolutely. I'm open to talking to you again as soon as possible. Let's jump on the momentum and I guess make this like a real disclosure session. You have a lot of good questions. Exactly. And this information is something that I spent every day last year making a video about. I have over 300 videos that I made between 2020 and 2021. I started the podcast to speak about the very same subject with insiders and people who experienced it as well. This is something that I've kind of made my passion project. And so I'm very happy to speak about it at length. Any subject, any little detail you need elaborating or explaining about, I'm definitely open to that. Would be awesome to come back ASAP. You can find if I can do a little self-insert, a plug here.
Of course.
You can find my videos and my archives on various subjects on either YouTube, on the channel The Rumors of Instinct Podcast. That's my YouTube channel. Or in any podcast directory that you can find from Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Overcast, iHeartRadio. You can find my podcast in many different places. So if you want to check out the different episodes, the past episodes, I go in depth with my own experiences. I go in depth with others' experiences as interviews that I do. I have over 80 podcast episodes right now, over an hour each, all about the SSP. Same thing with the YouTube channel, over 300 videos, all on the SSP.
Wow.
If you guys want to go and peruse those, subscribe to my channel, follow me on Instagram at Rumors of Instinct, all one word, Rumors of Instinct. Instagram, the official. I share daily different photos that kind of are inspiring my memories and what I find interesting. So updates, subjects, things like that I'm working on, projects I'm working on. Definitely check that out. I'm going to send you my link tree, and you can post that on this video. I'd much appreciate that, as well as so you can check me out that way. I'm always interested in hearing other people's experiences as well, and definitely willing to kind of join any kind of future project you might have yourself. I know this is kind of a new format, so definitely keep me in mind moving forward.
Oh, absolutely. Now, the final question I wanted to ask, unfortunately, probably only got 10 minutes tops before I really have to end this, unfortunately. But with regards to disclosure, in the sense of UFOs getting closer and closer to, people's houses, urban towns, cities, what do you make of that? It could very much be military and, preparation for the masses. But is there anything to that? Do you see disclosure in the next 5 years of some kind?
There will never be full disclosure like people think, because it's already happened.
Got you. Right.
You can consider the mainstream media approach to UFOs as glib and ignorant as anyone else that you might encounter. Right. But there have been no secrets kept to anyone with eyes to see. The reason why there are so many modern day sightings is simply because the factor in how many cameras, factor in how smart people are getting,
Right.
factor in that people are looking and taking it seriously, and that there have historically been always the same number of UFOs. It's just that there are now more people and more people who are awake and taking it seriously with cameras, right? The
Right.
idea of disclosure is a artificial concept created by the disinfo agents to keep us kind of arguing and bickering. But really, it's what you believe. You don't need anyone else's validation. Believe your own eyes. Critically think for yourself, right? Don't be a sheep. And
Got
the reason why it's happening is because we're part of the Galactic Federation. The Ashtar High Command, this is a colony. They have a lot of bases. Well, coincidentally, our Air Force bases are actually, cooperatively used by the Ashtar High Command, as they continue their operations.
mm,
You're seeing it more and more and more because the world powers are not in control of it. They're in control of the disinformation of it.
got you. Okay.
Like I said, before the Air Force was invited to the party, they couldn't keep up.
Right.
They
Right.
flew over Washington D.C. That's what I said.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is not this is not like disclosure. Battle of L.A. You can argue if it happened or not, but people who were there saw it. It
Well,
was on the front page of the paper.
would you subscribe to the phrase that if they wanted to take us out, they would have done it by now?
Yeah, that's exactly what I've been saying. But it's not that direct or blunt or unsophisticated.
Right.
Yes, of course, in the same way that if you owned a game reserve, you could shoot the elephant. The whole
Right.
point is to keep the elephant safe.
Right. Yeah. Right. I see.
Sounds
That's a
like, yes,
great way to
the
put
game
it.
warden could kill. It's not a matter of pride like that.
Right.
It's a matter of the difficulties of cooperatively evolving a species. And yes, no, we do engage in battles and skirmishes and we have our little game. But exactly that's at the same point, it is like, yeah, there are thousands and thousands of different ways to destroy the earth. That just
Right.
means they have 1,001 ways to save it.
Got you. Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's a great way to put it. I really like the way that you phrase that, seriously, because that's a
Well, that's
really
what the Solar Warden is. The Solar Warden's a defensive operation. It's a guarding
right.
operation. It's a coast guarding operation to keep our interests safe from extraterrestrials who are kind of, in those short, they're poaching.
Got you. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Makes
yes, like we may pose a direct threat to them, but like I said, it's like, you're dealing in scales of civilizations where there are millions of human beings alive today in space that the billions of human beings on Earth don't know anything about.
right.
There are trillions of aliens in this solar system that don't know Earth exists.
That's a great way to put it too, because actually I that totally slipped my mind, but thank you for clarifying that too, because it always pondered my mind, even my audiences too. Are there other, for example, species out there, more primitive than us, for example, or maybe just as advanced, but they haven't found us, or vice versa?
Well, the ICC, the group that I kind of want, we need to talk more about the ICC and Solar Warden and their adventures and what they've kind of done, like they're explored, but also Dark Fleet and everything. Like, say it's an iceberg, and we're just on the very surface of the iceberg. We just got the
Wow.
first inch, and we got to dig all the way down.
Well,
Um,
I
the
just wanted to,
ICC has 900 species that they've communicated with and started trading with. 900 species that the
wow.
ICC trades with.
Wow. 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 Well, the thing is what I'm going to do is, unfortunately, I'm going to have to end it here on a bit of a cliffhanger, because I'm sure everyone's going to want to hear more about that. But just because I'm on a bit of a time limit now, but I would like to thank you so, so much for coming on. I think my audience is really going to like this. I hope I've asked the questions a lot of my audience wanted to know more specifically about. And the fact that you were a part of the secret space program at one point is, I mean, to be honest, I have a tremendous amount of respect because of the amount of mental strength you have. But at the same time, too, I mean, it's not an easy thing. People think it's all cool and all that, but I mean, it's not as sensational as they make it seem.
It's something that you don't really. So exactly, like it's a type of spiritual awakening in the truest sense of the form, because our society is geared to discourage you from waking up. That is exactly what the society has made. It's a matrix to make you keep asleep.
Gotcha.
Waking up is the hardest thing to do, and then the hardest thing to do is stay awake.
Right. Gotcha.
When everything is telling you to go back to sleep, when everything is just saying give up, it's easier just to remember the first Matrix movie. That guy, the traitor.
The guy who played Ralph in The Sopranos.
Yeah.
That guy.
He was given the opportunity to go back to sleep.
Right.
That's exactly what the Matrix is. The Matrix can't stop you from waking up, but it'll do everything in its power to try to get you to go back to sleep.
Well, man, let's end it right there. I appreciate that so much for clarification, and I thank you so much for coming on, man.
No problem. God did this again immediately. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, brother.